In this video, we're going to look at how we can create a design to create a fidget spinner that we can then cut out using the laser cutter at CRC North Keilor. The spinner that we're going to make will use a bearing like all the others in the center, but instead of using more expensive bearings on the outside, we're going to use some hexagonal nuts that you'd usually use with bolts for the weights around the outside edge. So the program we're going to be using is Fusion 360. So if you haven't had this installed on your laptop, you need to do so. It's a free program. You just have to register an account with Autodesk. And if you haven't done that again, I suggest you do that with your school ID. If you want to install it on a computer at home, feel free to do that as well. But once you open it up, it's a web sort of program, so it saves to the web. All the storage is online. You can store things offline if you'd like to, but by default, it requires an internet connection. So we're not going to be creating a 3D model, which is what most of this is all about. We're going to be creating in the 2D space because the laser cutter only works in 2 dimensions. So we're going to be working in this area with the sketch tools. Okay. So the first thing we'll do is to start a new sketch by clicking on this create sketch here. And then what it's asking you is which plane you would like to work on. All right. So while you could technically work on any plane, logically we want to work on the flat or the horizontal plane. We're going to click this box here, and it's basically just opened up a 2D space for us. Now, as I said, all our tools are primarily in the sketch menu here. All right. The only one that we're really going to use outside of that is occasionally we'll choose the select tool over here. The sketch that we're making comes into this pop-out menu here. You can rename it and do things if you like, but we're going to have to come back over here a bit later on. Okay, let's get started. The first thing you'd probably want to do is to create your total workspace. So if you think about a fidget spinner, you hold it between 2 fingers, usually your thumb and either middle or pointer fingers. So you want to think about the distance between that middle area and the rest of your hand to make sure that the fidget spinner would be able to spin through. Now, in most cases, that's between 4 and 4.5 centimeters. We're obviously going to be working in millimeters to be really accurate. So that's between 40 and 45 millimeters. So what we're going to do is draw a circle whose radius is 45 millimeters. Okay, so we'll do that by coming up to the sketch menu, choosing circle, and we'll actually take this first option here. Right, it's going to be using the diameter. So although we've worked out our radius, we need the diameter, which is of course right across. So if we've got a 45 millimeter radius, then we need a 90 millimeter diameter. So it makes sense to start from the middle. I'm going to click and drag out a circle. Now, while I'm still holding down my mouse button, I can just type in the measurement I want. So 90, right? Oops, sorry, try that again. 90. Press enter or return. And the second time just stores the measurement as a line. Okay, so I've got a 90 millimeter all the way around. Now this line is going to get in our way, so I'm going to select it by clicking on it and pressing the delete key on my keyboard just to get rid of that line. I don't need the measurement visible. All right, so that's our outer edge. The next thing we'll probably like to do is actually create the hole where our bearing will go in the middle. So we're going to use, again, the same circle tool, and our bearing is 22 millimeters in diameter, but we actually need to make it a bit smaller so that it's going to sit nicely once the laser cuts it. So we're actually going to take 0.2 of a millimeter off. So that means our total is going to be 21.8 millimeters. That's really, really critical. So we're going to come back to the center here, measure one out, and type in 21.8. If we go with 22, our bearing will just fall straight through. So press enter and enter again. And same as before, we'll click on the actual measurement line and get rid of it just to clean it up. Don't worry about these other little icons that are appearing. They're not actually required for us. We can just ignore them. So what we now have is the absolute outer edge of our fidget spinner, and we have the space that the bearing is going to go into. What we really need to do is allow some space to make sure there's always material to hold the bearing in the spot, and that we don't go too far to the outside edge so that we don't have anything to hold our weights later on. So we traditionally want at least 4 millimeters in each direction. Now we could draw more circles and things and measure it out, but there's a really good tool in programs like this called offset. Offset basically takes the same shape that you choose and draws it bigger or smaller a certain distance from the original. So I take the offset tool and I go to my outside edge, click and drag, you'll see that I'm now getting a new circle drawn. And if I drag this icon out or in, I'm getting the same shape being drawn either bigger or smaller. And if you look across to the side here, we can see the measurement. And notice that if I come in, it is actually a negative measurement. If I go past the original, it's a positive. So in this case, I want to come in by 4 millimeters. So I actually need to do a negative. So I'm just going to type in -4 here and press enter. And I've got a perfect circle drawn 4 millimeters from the original. We'll get that line out of there just to clean it up. For the bearing area, I want to come out 4 millimeters. The same tool, sketch, offset, choose that circle, come out. Again, I can drag it and try and guess, but it's easy just to come here and actually type the measurement in. So what I now have is an area that I shouldn't edit into because that's going to hold it together, and this is also going to hold my bearing in place. We'll just get that line there. Right, we now want to create our actual weight spaces, what's going to hold our hex nuts that we have here. If you were designing this with another bearing in mind, you could draw another circle here, of course, but we're using the hex nuts. So we could sit there and try and draw one out, but of course, great tools are provided for us. So in here, we have a polygon tool. Now the hex nuts that we're going to use are actually 15 millimeters across, but again, we need to take 15.1 millimeters, and we have to take 0.2 millimeters off. But we also are going to be doing this by the radius now, not by the diameter. So we have to half that again. So we're actually going to be drawing this at 7.45 millimeters. Very important that you're accurate here. So I'm going to grab this tool and I'm just going to draw one over here for a moment just to show you. So as I draw, you can see it's drawing it's actually started with a hex shape, which is great. You can change that. But basically when I draw this, I need to actually type my number in while still holding down my mouse button. Press enter. So I'll get a shape like that. I don't actually want that one, so I'm going to highlight over it and delete it. That was just to demonstrate how it works. So we're going to draw one in here. Now we could guess and try and draw it, but we want to make sure we don't go into this space, right? So I'm going to actually draw a temporary line down here to find the center of what will be my hex nut. So if I come to sketch and I choose line, I'll start from that outside edge, that's as far as I want to go, and come back down over here, and we know it's 7.45. Notice I'm still holding my mouse button down, press enter, and I've got that line there. I can get rid of my measurement, because again, it's just in the way. But the end of this line is now going to be the center of my hex shape. It's going to go around here. Again, you don't have to do it this way, but this just means I'm going to get it nice and accurate. So I'm now coming back over here. I'm going to get my polygon tool, the first option, use that as my starting point, and I'm just going to drag up. Again, I'm not going to guess. I'm going to type it in. So try that again. 7.45, enter, and I've got a perfect polygon, exactly the right size I need. Okay, and you can see it hasn't gone past into my important area here. I can choose the temporary line that we had and delete that because it served its purpose, and I've now got this shape. All right, we now need to create something to actually hold this around. We created this space here to hold the bearing in place. We've got our hole for our weight, our nut, but we actually need to create some space around it to hold it. So there's a lot of different ways, and this is where part of your own design could come in. In this particular case, I'm just going to put a circle around that as well. So I'm going to come back to sketch. I'm going to go to circle, and using the center there, I'm just going to drag it out to match the outside line. Oops, a bit too far, like that. But of course, this is where I said you can get very creative and do your own shaping. All right, I'm happy with that. So it's almost looking like part of a fidget spinner, but what I need to do is join this weight area and the bearing area together with some sort of arm. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use an arc, a 3-point arc. And again, this is an area where you can be creative and do what suits your design. So I'm going to start it from about here. I'm going to join it on here, and I'm just going to bend it in a little bit. And then I'll try and match it up. And there are tools to copy this and flip it and rotate. You can explore those tools. I'm just using my eye at the moment to roughly get it right. I'm happy enough with that. Okay, so it's looking like one arm of a fidget spinner right now. We can actually get rid of all our guidelines now. So we can click on this, select, we can click on this outside line. We don't need it anymore, press delete. And we can get rid of that one and press delete, and we can really start to see that single arm. But what we need to do is have 3 arms. Another one out here somewhere, another one out here somewhere. So instead of having to redraw all that and work it all out, again, there's a great tool built into Fusion 360 that lets us duplicate this in a circle however many times we want. So we're going to go back to Sketch. We're going to now use Circular Pattern. Now, the first thing circular pattern requires is to select what it is you want to duplicate. So we want these arms, we want the circle, and we want the polygon, but unfortunately we do have to click on each line of the polygon. So we've got all the things highlighted that we want. Now, we don't need to choose the circles because this is actually what is going to rotate around, and of course the circle is already there. If you did choose it, it won't matter. It's just a bit of a waste of time. So now what we do is we go here and say, now we're going to choose the center point, the pointers of which this is going to rotate around. And of course, that will actually be the dead center of my fidget spinner. So as soon as I click on this, watch what happens. I now have 3 equally spaced out arms. Beautiful tool to use. If I wanted a 4 fidget spinner, it's really easy. I can just say, no, do 4 or 5 or so on. If I wanted a 2, I can go back the other way. Very, very great way to do it. So we're just going to stick with our 3 though. Press OK, and we're really looking like we have a fidget spinner here. We do have all these extra lines. We've got to do a bit of cleaning up, all right? So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so we've got these extra lines here that we need to get rid of. So again, I'm going to come back to my sketch menu, and I'm going to use the trim tool, because what that does is simply, as I move over a line, it highlights that little segment, and if I click on a segment, I actually remove that bit of line. So we're just going to go around and clean up, removing bits of line that we don't need, because we don't want those to be cut. So if I have a look, oh, I've actually realized I missed a line here. Doesn't matter, I can draw that back in a second. So if I have a look, it's looking really good now, but if we're not careful, we're actually going to have a big problem, because if we use this, this line here will get cut, and so this will basically cut off our arms. So I have to remember to also remove those bits as well. Otherwise, we would actually cut everything into little tiny pieces. Now, as I notice, I've missed a line here, so that's easily fixed. I'm not going to waste time copying it around. I'm just going to simply get a line. I'm just going to join those points up as well. I must have missed clicking them earlier. So we now have our fidget spinner. It's pretty much ready to go. We should be saving this as we go, of course. So we're going to go save, maybe call it fidget, probably put your name in there. Remember, this is saving online, so you can access it again on any computer that you've got access to this program on. But basically, the last step we need to do to make it ready to actually have cut out is we need to export this into something that the laser cutter can use. So we're going to come over here to the actual sketch. So if it hasn't been expand it out now. We're going to right click on that sketch, and we're going to choose this option that says save as DXF. When you choose that, you actually are now saving on your computer. So it can be put on a USB to hand in or to email to me so that you can have it cut out on the actual cutter. So again, I suggest you make it a file name, something that makes sense. All right, maybe version 1, and put your name in it and so forth so that we know whose it is. And press save, and now that's on your computer. So as I said, you can put that onto a USB or something else to give for cutting. And that is the entire process. So experiment with it. So create different arms, create different shapes. You might want to try a hexagonal shape around here. Basically, have as much fun with the design as you want. Just remember to keep it inside that original 90mm circle. And just remember to always have material around any holes that you cut, and to keep your diameters for your bearings always at 21.8. And if you are using the hex nuts, they must be a total of 14.9. Otherwise, those things will fall out. So hopefully this has made a bit of sense to you. You might want to re-watch it a couple of times, but that's basically the process. So good luck, and if you need any help, come and speak to me.